I was about 7 years old. I was walking to school, and this man came out of his car, pulled over, came out of his car, and he pulled me into his car. There was some drug involvement at 11, some marijuana use, some alcohol use. I began having boyfriends at a really young age. My mom was young. She was about 18 years old. My father was a few years older when they met. I was conceived. They were not married. After they split up, I was about 1.5 years, and they split up. As my mom got deeper into drug addiction, I went and stayed most of the time with my grandmother. I was going from every home. I was going from my mom's house to my grandmother's house to my father's house. And there was totally different, 3 different scenarios in each house. I couldn't stay with my dad for too long because he married a woman that turned out to be abusive to me. There was a lot of trauma that I developed during that time with her. And so I didn't get to stay with him as much when I was little. I preferred staying with my grandmother. I did love Jesus when I was a kid. My dad taught me how to pray. He taught me the Our Father, the Psalms 23. And then when I started learning to read, it was part of my daily routine to read and study. One of the times that I went to go stay with my mom, I was walking to school and I was walking late, that I was making my way to school. So there was no other children walking along with me. I was about 7 years old. I was walking to school, and this man came out of his car, pulled over, came out of his car, and he pulled me into his car. And he had very bad intentions towards me. When it was about to get to the scary part, I prayed the way my father had taught me to pray. And next thing I know, the man just put me out of his car. So I'm very thankful for the way that my father started teaching me young. There was times that I didn't want to go to church. There was times that I dreaded going to church because we were in church every time the doors open. But now looking back at that, I'm really grateful for all of his teachings and his inspiration and being somebody that I could look up to as an example. There was times that I did have to go and stay with my father, which I love being with my father. It was just his wife at that time that was really hard for me. I would go stay with him, but and at that time they went to the Pentecostal religion, so it was super strict with the dress code and the hair code, and very restrictive for a young girl and adolescents. They wound up getting a divorce. When they got a divorce, I decided I didn't want anything to do with the church. And I told my dad to take me to my mom's. And so I went to stay with my mom. And then that's when I started to fall away from everything that he taught me, fall away from the church. I was about 11 years old. My dad went and dropped me off, and we were living at the time in some of the roughest areas of Houston. And my mom was still involved in drug addiction, and I didn't have any supervision. So I began to just run around and do things that a 11-year-old girl didn't have any business doing. There was some drug involvement at 11, some marijuana use, some alcohol use. I began having boyfriends at a really young age. Some of the boys were a lot older than myself. Just really looking for love in all of the wrong places. There was also another time that I got, again, taken by force by a boyfriend that I had broken up with. He came and told me that he was going to take me to get something to eat. And so I got in the car with him, and he never brought me back. He took me back to his house. And I remember being in that house locked up, not able to leave for days. And then finally a day came where my mom came knocking on the window or on the door, and he said, "Be quiet, don't say anything." And for a moment there, I wasn't going to say anything, but then I felt like this is my only chance. So I yelled, "Mom, I'm in here." And my mom started to really bang on the door. And when he opened the door, I was able to get away and go with my mom. Yes, there was a lot of drug abuse. There was a lot of promiscuity. I really just didn't know what I was looking for. I really was just looking to be loved and feel wanted, because I didn't feel like I had that. I never felt loved or accepted as a child. That led me into relationship after relationship after relationship. I wound up getting pregnant at 14 years old. At 14 years old, I ran off with a boy. He was 16 years old. He was in and out of the juvenile system. We wound up having 3 children back to back. It got really dangerous with him because he increased in his gang activity, he increased in his criminal activity, he increased in his violence, and it was becoming very unsafe for me and the children. So I wound up having to separate from him, which was really hard for me because all I wanted was for my children to have their real mother and real father, to raise them together. And then from there, I wound up moving to the Rio Grande Valley with my dad. My dad had moved to the Rio Grande Valley. We moved down there just to start a new life there. So when I moved there, my father had kind of a home. He and his new wife, they had a home that they would help women and young girls that were in a need of a place to stay. And I felt kind of envious that he was helping these people and that I had felt alone and abandoned. But it was just a perception, because when I had to leave my previous relationship, when I had to leave their father, I wound up having to go to a homeless shelter. And I was in a homeless shelter, and my father came and got my kids and took my kids in. I saved money, and then I came back to join him and my children. He had my children, and he had them well taken care of. But yet when I got there, I was just so angry. I was just angry at everything. I was angry at life. So I was pretty bitter. But my dad did guide me in my anger. He did let me know that he was the boss. So while I was there in the valley, I met somebody. I was about 20, 21 years old, in my early 20s. And we formed a relationship, and then we wound up moving in together. We wound up getting married afterwards. But before we got married, I started getting involved with drugs, deeper into drugs. So I started using cocaine. He thought that it would be a good idea to sell cocaine because we frequented the bars quite often, and everybody was looking for cocaine, and he thought it would be an easy way to make money. It went from selling small amounts to people that were looking for it. We wound up being led into drug trafficking. I believe I was in my mid to late 20s as I began to just fall deeper and deeper into drug addiction, and I couldn't stop no matter how hard I tried. My husband was very controlling. I begged to go to rehab, and he would not let me go. I wound up feeling that suicide was a better option than what I was currently living. And I would wake up crying simply because I woke up. I didn't want to wake up. I would wake up in fear. I would wake up not knowing what the day was going to bring, what it was going to be like. And one of these times where I was contemplating suicide, I believe that the Lord just kind of gave me an image of my children going through different stages of their life without me. When I saw that image, I said, no, I have to fight. I have to fight for my life. I have to fight for my children. But I didn't know what to do, so I just continued going down that same cycle. There was one night that I was outside coming down from a cocaine high. It was almost about to be dawn break. And I was so angry at God up until this point. I even renounced him. I said, I don't believe there's a God. My mom can tell you that. I said, I don't even believe that there's a God anymore. I believe that the same sense of peace that you get from going to church, that I could get it from going to yoga. I was so misled. And then there was finally that one day, I was standing in the backyard. The sun was starting to come up, and I looked up to the sky and I said, I know you are there. I know you're there. Why don't you help me? Why do you leave me like this? And then I said, I need you to help me. At that moment, nothing really changed. I went back inside. I crawled under the blankets before everybody in the house. My children started waking up, so they couldn't see me the way that I was. And I just hid in my room and hid under my blankets. Maybe about a year or two after that moment, I was still in drug addiction, but I was also praying every day that the Lord would set me free from it. My dad stayed consistent in my life. My dad would come and check on me really regularly, and I would be so shameful that I didn't want him to see me. I would stay away from him. But then came the day where they came to tell me that he was having a birthday, and the church was going to be celebrating the birthday. So my ex and I decided we were going to go. It was necessary for us to be there for my dad's birthday. The plan was whenever everybody ducked their heads to pray, that we would duck out because we had to go to the bar. When that time came, everybody bowed their heads to pray. My ex began to nudge me that this was our moment to leave, but I just had something come over me that I wanted to pray. So I said, oh, hold on just a moment, I want to pray. I looked at my father. I was so proud of him, and I said, God, I want to make my father proud of me. And then I looked up to the ceiling and I said, God, I want to make you proud of me. And I couldn't help it but to cry as I said that. And as I cried, I felt like this oil was being poured out over me. The addiction that I had struggled with every day, the torment of that addiction that I struggled with every day, instantly broke off of me in that moment.